Way the Cookie Crumbles, not a podcast this time, no, and we don't have Lou.
No.
Where's he
He's
today,
not here
Sam?
today. He's just at Wembley and he was on the bench today, so he'll just be doing his warm down with probably Southgate, him and Southgate doing a few star jumps on the corner of the pitch.
They give us a ticket to Wembley, didn't they, to play, and we thought we'd let Lou go. We're past that sell-by day, aren't we?
Yeah, I'd rather watch it here.
Yeah, so we've just watched it, a great win, a 1-0 against Croatia, probably the toughest group game to start off with, and I'd say we won it a bit of ease. So we're going to do a bit of the 5 things we learned, aren't we?
Yeah. Should we start straight into it?
Straight into what's the first thing we learned today?
The first thing we learned, we've just spoken about going straight into it, and a player who went straight into it today and was straight into every tackle was Calvin Phillips, Jim. Started next to Declan Rice, or that's what we thought he'd be. He did play a little bit more advanced. So what did you think about his role today?
I thought it was a surprising one, a welcome surprise though. He's very high up for a lot of the times, but yeah, like you say, I think what's key from his performance was that he was everywhere and he was still running around even late into the game when we was holding on, and we'd made a few subs, but he didn't seem to lose any of that energy, and I think that's probably the effect Bielsa's had on him this season at Leeds.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen that Leeds team cover pretty much. Was it only one game they didn't cover the most distance in? Was that against City, I think?
And that was because I think we had 10 men, so we had to cover more ground.
Yeah, so I think in 37 of their 38 league games, they covered the most distance, and that's hardly surprising if you look at Calvin Phillips today. And there was probably a few doubters when you saw his name on the team sheet, to be honest. A lot of people don't think he's good enough, but I'm sure those people have probably seen a different side to Calvin Phillips. I've always rated him. I do think he's a very good player, composed on the ball, a player that likes to take it under pressure, and you've got to be, like you've already said, in a Bielsa side. You can't really play that single pivot in a Bielsa side and not be a good player, and I thought he was comfortably the best player on the pitch today, definitely for England, and probably out of all the players on there. I mean, you spoke about Bellingham. What did you think? Would you?
Well, yeah. Well, when we did our the guessing the opening 11, I think
You
me
went
and
for Bellingham,
I think you went for Phillips, me and Lou went for Bellingham, and I still think Bellingham played well. And look, I still think he could do a job, but I guess I didn't know enough about Calvin Phillips. I thought he was more of a holding player and he'd get in Rice's way, but like I say, he bombed on up there. I think he actually got called for offside, which he's not been called offside all season for Leeds. I read this on Twitter before, and he was pressing the tackle because there was spells in the game where Croatia really kind of killed it with possession because that's what they're good at, and he was the one harrying them, and he got forward and he was great for the goal too, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. I kept talking about that we needed to be brave, and Phillips brought that intensity, and it was a great pass from Kyle Walker, who I thought had a shaky first half, but it was the first time really in the whole game that, apart from the few over the top, but in terms of getting balls through the lines, it was the first time that England did that, and that was when Walker drilled it into Phillips, who took a man on, got it out with his feet, and played Raheem Sterling through. And Raheem slotted another player who we'll speak about in a minute. Got a lot of stick before, well, when he was named on the team sheet, and probably, I'd guess a lot of people predicting their 11s for that first game wouldn't have put him in. But yeah, Philip doesn't get many assists, but I mean, there's no better time to do that than in England's opening game.
Yeah, and like you say about Raheem Sterling being another one of them players that bit of a coin flip. So we're going to the second thing we learned, which is Southgate's coin flip decisions. Obviously, it's a very deep squad, and so deep that we've actually left Ben Chilwell and Jadon Sancho out of the squad, and they're not even injured. That just proves the depth they've got, and I think 2 players today that started and did very well, and a lot of England fans pre-kick-off would have been worried about them both, would be Raheem Sterling, who scored the goal, and Tyrone Mings at the back. Yeah.
A couple of coin flips. I've seen people talking about maybe do you put Ben White straight in there, or you wouldn't expect Cody to go into a 4. Do we change it up and play Walker, Stones and Cody as a 3? A lot of people didn't want Mings, including myself. Wasn't sure whether he was calm enough, whether he was collected enough, whether he had that little, almost like a brain fart, which you just cannot afford at the elite level. You let a striker through once, as we saw today. There was one moment for both teams where a striker had a one-on-one, and thankfully Sterling put it away. So I thought Mings played really well. Weirdly very calm, and I thought his pace was very helpful as well. I remember there was a moment when I thought the ball got past him, but his pace and his long legs stopped the ball, and Stones came over and covered. So definitely a lot more confident with his inclusion now, especially if Maguire isn't fit for that second game against Scotland, knowing that he's done it. 90 minutes, clean sheet. really well. I mean, what did you think about Sterling? Obviously, we were speaking before it, and you were fine with it. A lot of people weren't fine with it, including myself. I thought it wasn't just considering his form this season. A lot of people on Twitter as well weren't happy with his inclusion. And not only that, Sancho not even being in the squad despite being fit, you're starting Sterling as well. That's a very big call that paid off.
Yeah, well, I do get where it comes from, because it's probably his worst season in 4 or 5 seasons, maybe at City since he first joined, but he's still got that in the locker. And I think the reason he hasn't been playing at City hasn't been because he's necessarily been having a stinker of a season, but you look at Foden and Mahrez' performances throughout the season on the left and right, and you just couldn't drop him. You couldn't drop him for Rashford either if Rashford played for City. So, and that position for me was another one of them toss-ups where the squad's so good, I'm kind of happy with whoever he goes with. Same with left back and right back, and with Phillips and Bellingham as well. And then when I thought a bit more about it, and I thought a bit more about what Southgate wants from the team, is he wants a bit more experience in there, because it's a young squad. And he said before in commentary, Sterling was England's most capped international player at 61. And also he needs a player with Mount in there and Foden and Kane dropping back. He needs someone to go over the top, which is, it leaves one of Sancho, Rashford and Sterling. And I think Sancho and Rashford are a touch more than Sterling, the kind of player that wants to get inside a bit more. Sterling can hug that touchline a bit better, and I thought he did very well. I thought he was England's best attacker today. Phillips was just so good that he has to get man of the match. And I know the UEFA give it to Sterling, but yeah, I thought Sterling's run's really good. And a lot of the times in the first half, especially when England went direct, they couldn't live with his runs. They had to foul him, or we got in behind, and it was the key to Foden in the post, which would have been a lovely start. Just a little run from the throw-in.
Yeah, and we've spoken about the depth of the squad loads of times before, and like I said, a lot of people in the predicted 11s didn't have Sterling anywhere near it, so it's only a bonus for England now that he's come into that 11 and he's scored a goal, and he's right back up there in that conversation again for me. He probably starts the next game. I don't see how he can't after scoring the goal in the 1-0 win.
And he's gone on goal scoring runs for City. He tends to be kind of like almost like a streaky kind of player. So that's probably the one player that you'd want to get in form, because a lot of these players are class, but Sterling, we have seen it for his career, he can get in these dips and have a few bad games, and you can't afford to do that in a tournament because you'll just be dropped and won't play again. So that's a good thing that they've got an elite option there.
That's it, and I mean, the fact that Jack Grealish didn't even get a minute on the pitch kind of shows the depth that England have up there. We saw Rashford and Calvert-Lewin come on. Kane went off 80-ish minutes after colliding with the post, so we're hoping that was just a precautionary, impact kind of injury.
I think you mentioned it too during the game, or was it after the game when he was on about his relationship with Trippier on the left? We're going to talk about Trippier now. We're going to move on to the Trippier segment. This is the third thing we learned, is we don't really think Trippier works at left back. No fault for his own, but he's one of the best right backs in Europe after having that really good season with LA, a title winning side. But he just couldn't manoeuvre play in the build-up quick enough, because he was right-footed on the left. He was a lot of the time coming back inside, switching it to Mings again, and a lot of sideways stuff. But what did work was Trippier's first-time balls over the top, which a left footer wouldn't be able to do, and Sterling was the benefactor of that.
That was it, yeah. I'm guessing that was the main reason he was playing, because we spoke about, was it set pieces, and he didn't take the corners, and I think he took one of the 2 free kicks that we had. But definitely we were playing it into Trippier. He was almost first time whipping it around the corner, so to speak, over the top. And like you said, Sterling got in a couple of times. But apart from that, it did stunt us a little bit every time we kept giving it to him, obviously because he's not left-footed and he's not that type of fullback anyway. Even if he was on the right-hand side, you're not going to see him trying to commit a defender and take him on. But definitely on the left, that's just never going to happen. So he'd be giving it back to Mings, who a lot of people already feel shaky about him when he's on the ball anyway, or he'd be giving it into Rice or Calvin Phillips inside, who've got, Modric or whoever on their arse. So it was putting England under needless pressure, I thought. And I think if you've got that, sure, you've got Chilwell, I just think it's a little bit ridiculous not to start either, when probably both of them start for 90% of the other teams that are in the tournament still. So I'm hoping that was just for one specific tactic. Maybe they spotted a weakness behind the right centre-back or the right back for Croatia, and Shaw or Chilwell will be back in for the Scotland game, and I think we'll need to break down a bit more of a low block. So that should give us another option going round that left winger rather than going over the top.
Yeah, I think Southgate has been a bit loyal to one of his favourites, especially from the World Cup. And Trippier, yeah, he had a good season, and he's set pieces. He's a specialist in that area of the pitch. But he didn't really take many today. Like I say, like Stan said, he took one, and it didn't really prove vital for England today. I know he won today, but you've got to be a bit like cutthroat about these decisions going into the next game. You've got to take the negatives as well and think the actual football for long periods. England didn't play good stuff. There's a lot of a mix between trying to play out from the back or just knock it long over the top. And I think Trippier there was one of the reasons. I think if you put a Luke Shaw in next game, it opens up the pitch a bit more.
Yeah.
And you can play more attacking football and a bit better interchange kind of stuff. Players going round. Still in forward, in which we didn't see much of today.
No, you're right. It opens up the pitch. You use the width of the pitch properly, and I think, like I've already said, against a team like Scotland, who obviously we don't know their result, they play tomorrow, or maybe today, depending on when this video comes out. It might take that one overlap from a Shaw or a Chilwell to take one defender out that creates space for a Kane or a Sterling or whoever to tap the ball in what I think will be a very tight game. I think they'll sit in probably a 5. And let us come at them and try and break when they can. So I'd be surprised if Trippier started at left back again, and I'm hoping that it was just for that one specific tactic of getting it into Trippier's feet and knocking it over the top first time, which, as Jim says, first half we saw that 2 or 3 times was pretty effective for us.
Yeah, like you say, you've just touched on it there, that we're going to expect a lot more of the ball against Scotland and Czech Republic in the last group game, because today I think it was about 50-50 today. I think Croatia just edged it, and England probably benefited from that. We're going to face a bit of a low block the next game, and we're going to need to ask more bit of that attack. And I think if you play a left footer there, England are going to benefit from that, definitely, the way they play football and the way they can control the tempo and move Scotland defenders over the pitch and stuff. We're not just a one-sided team. And I think that will nicely transition into the fourth thing we learned today is Croatia on the ball a lot. We kind of learned they was a bit indecisive and not the team that beat us in the semi-final of the World Cup.
Definitely not. I think they lack that potency, like we said in the preview. I think somebody like Mandzukic to relieve them of pressure in certain instances when England were on top, especially that first 20-25 minutes when we came flying out. And yeah, there wasn't really any moment in the game where I felt too uncomfortable. Couple of crosses, there was that chance where it fell to Kramaric and he shafted it wide. But apart from that, I can't really think of too much. And a side like Croatia were obviously runners up in a World Cup final 3 years ago. You should be a little bit more, worked a little bit more than that. Obviously we had to be respectful, like Jim says, they did shade possession, and with the midfielders that they've got, you've got to be wary of that. So I'm not surprised we didn't go too gung-ho, and we were a little bit tentative. But in hindsight, looking back at that game, maybe we could have took a few more risks, because I didn't. There was no. They never really took control of the game and put load. There was a couple of instances like after that first 25 minutes when you could tell that 20 degree heat kind of got into us after they didn't have the ball, that they took the ball. But even then, I can't think of anything happening for them.
I think what I noticed was, like you said, that moment in the back 20 minutes of the first half, after England had started well and they started to control the game, even though they was controlling it, they never flipped that switch, that killer instinct.
For possession's sake,
it was almost as if they was happy to run down the clock
and
to just stop the England, the pressure. Whereas the 2018 team that beat us, I feel like they'd have asked a bit more about it.
You had that killer instinct too. I think with Mandzukic, Perisic is a few years younger. They obviously had Rakitic, who I thought was a huge miss today, because if you've got Rakitic and Modric, you've got to deal with both of them, whereas they only had Modric today, as we know. So if you can stop him, they're going to struggle. Whereas in the 2018 one, if you stop one, you've got to stop the other, and that's going to create spaces for other people if you do try and double up on them or whatever.
I actually think they could be in for a shock, and I think when they play Scotland team, that's going to be full of willing runners and
physicality and energy.
Yeah, especially in the midfield. John McGinn, when you think of players like McTominay and in the middle there, because like you say, they are good players, but there was a lot of gaps for England to run it in behind them, for Rice to turn or a Phillips to get into that hole. That was England's tactic today, but if Scotland pack that midfield, which we've seen them do from the friendlies and the warm-up games, then I think Croatia. I'll predict Croatia to go out in the group or finish third.
Third and get one of the three.
Yeah, they might get one of the things, but I think rather Scotland or Czech will surprise them.
I mean, that's it. Obviously, you've got to be respectful, but if you're a Croatian fan, you're probably happy with that Kovacic, Brozovic, Modric midfield. But then you remember that the other team has to have the ball as well at some points. And there were a few times today where Mount drove through, and there was a couple of times when we just played a ball through into Harry Kane, and they weren't good going the other way. And we've seen, like you said, McGinn and McTominay are good at carrying that ball, and Scotland are going to have players like that who are pragmatic and energetic and physical. So it's whether they can deal with that, because I didn't really think they dealt with any physical battles too well today at all. So definitely not the side that they were. And you might be right, Jim. Third or fourth potentially if Scotland and Czech can fight it out.
Well, we'll see more from Scotland and Czech tomorrow when they play. But yeah, I think I'd be a bit worried if I was Croatia. That Asian side.
It's losing your first game as well.
It's a massive mental hit, isn't it? And in the heat today, it could still be hot. The last thing we learned today, Stan.
Well, the last thing we learned, Jim, is that football is definitely coming home. It's the first time England have won their first game at a Euros, the first group game, and it is also the first time that Croatia have lost their first group game at a Euros. So the odds were stacked against us, but Southgate's men prevailed.
Yeah, unbeaten in European Championships at Wembley. And so, do you play them all at Wembley or most of them?
I think we play all the group games, and I think it depends how the knockout kind of lands. But the semi and the final, should we get there, or when we get there, should I say, both played at Wembley on our side of the draw. So we just
need to ride them.
Round of 16 and quarter-final wave, and you never know. You really never know, especially the abundance of attacking talent we've got. If we can get Maguire back in there, and even if not, if Mings and Stones with Rice and Phillips in front can be as solid in those games as they were today, then you never know. So nobody would have thought we'd have got to the semis in 2018.
No, but that being, I know I was saying a bit tongue in cheek, like the football is coming home and England are going to win it, but they actually could win it. They're definitely a contender. Listen, they're one of the favourites for a reason. That attack can carry a team to a title in itself. Like you say, look at the bench that we didn't use today. Grealish and Sancho didn't even see a minute.
Didn't even come on. Yeah, you got Ben Chilwell, Reece James, Champions League winners. Who else was there? Jordan Henderson obviously didn't get any minutes at all. Harry Maguire's still to come in. Luke Shaw didn't get a minute. So we've got a very good squad.
So it's a very good building block I've had today, and there's a lot more to come. I think the first game was going to be a bit cagey. I think you're going to even see better stuff from England now. It's only going to get better.
That's it. We were bound to be tentative and a little bit cagey, but those individual performances, the team performance, and I think the important assist for Calvin Phillips, who probably had his doubters, and definitely the goal for Raheem Sterling, who definitely had his doubters, can only be good for England. And it'd be good to see the likes of Sancho, Shaw, Chilwell, Reece James, Jack Grealish, the list goes on. Come into the next few games, they'll definitely have the part to play. And we will be reviewing and previewing all the way through, won't we, Jim?
We will. The next game is Friday the 18th against Scotland, which should be one of the games of the tournament. Obviously, last time that happened was the famous Gaza goal. Dennis Chur, could see a Foden do that again with his haircut. So yeah, I think if we get time this week, we'll do a preview of that, should I say, because we want to get a chance to watch Scotland first, see what they're about.
Yeah.
We'll do a bit more reaction stuff. Maybe if you like something like this, we'll do a 5 things we learned again. And if you liked anything like this, like the video, subscribe and let us know what you want us to do, and let us know what you think about England.
See you then.